Welcome to Eternal Paradigm. Together, we're uncovering human experience by exploring physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual stories. With me, your host, Bhavya Raval. Welcome to the Creativity Series, where we explore creativity as a human experience. Hello, hi, welcome to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. So we're still in the creativity series and it's such a cool exploration, I have to tell you. Before I head into what's happening in this episode, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up, really. A lot has been happening and we've had 2 Instagram Live episodes as a part of the actual creativity series. And these have been incredible. More details about these is to follow. And the actual recording of this is also going to be available for you to access in an audio-only format. And the video is already available on Instagram. So make sure you head on over to Eternal Paradigm Podcast on Instagram. I'll also be sharing those Instagram Lives on the Facebook page. On the note of Facebook, we now have 24 members at this point of the recording in the Facebook group. And it's actually really interesting, the type of conversations and the banter that goes on. So if you want to be a part of that community, and I would absolutely love for you to join, come and join us. You can find the group by going onto Facebook and typing in Eternal Paradigm. If you go to the Eternal Paradigm podcast page, you will find the Facebook group. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up before we head off into what's happening in this episode. So there are some really interesting things planned for the rest of this year. And one of the things in the pipeline, in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to give you a bit more clarity, more of an update. But you know, the whole point of the podcast is really to create and showcase and share personal experiences and stories of people like you and me. And that's the most important thing I have to share with you, because I was recently actually asked by someone if I do plan on getting some big names onto the podcast. And yes, I'm sure that will happen because that's how things go. And that's kind of like a little hint of what's coming. But ultimately, the essence, the core of the podcast is to give a platform for people like you and me, people who are at different stages of their exploratory journey in their life and what that has meant to them. And that's not to say that bigger names or more well-known people don't have that, because they do. And we hear a lot of them. They all have their own podcasts. They all have their platform. They all have a very steady place to share their learning, knowledge, information, and experiences from. And that's why, for me, it's really important to create this podcast that gives, like I say, your neighbor, the person who you see and speak to every day, but possibly don't know enough about them. It's about giving them this space to really share and to really open up about what their experience has been. Anyone can go onto social media and talk about their experience, and anyone can put all of this stuff together. But ultimately, the essence of Eternal Paradigm Podcast is to create a real, true, meaningful sense of connection and to create a space that allows people like you and me to share our realities, our experiences, and also to share our growth. What lockdown really showed to me was I was missing conversation. Yes, I was having conversation with people every day, but what was happening is you end up having these like huge Zoom calls or WhatsApp calls with lots of other people. And I don't mind that. When you're talking to your mates, it's great, right? But when you're doing that constantly, I was feeling an energy drain, because to me, it's actually having the one-to-one conversation that matters. To me, who is incredibly inquisitive and nosy, I really missed sitting on a bus or being on a train and just listening to other people talking, because I am a notorious people watcher. That's who I am. And I so missed that. And so that was one of the kind of things that the podcast came about, because I'm so nosy, I'm so inquisitive that I would be somewhere And I would actually just be listening to everyone else, what they were saying. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And so that prompted me to really put the podcast together. Obviously, there's a whole other aspect of it when it comes to my personal experience, but the podcast itself is not even about my personal experience. And I have to say that to you and make it totally clear. If you want to know more about me personally, then let's connect, get in touch. You can come and follow my work on Instagram. You can connect with me on Facebook. So we can definitely have that conversation. But ultimately, the podcast is here to stay as a platform to talk about human experience through personal conversations and insightful journeys that open up really a space for you to listen, connect, and also to question, to get some of the questions that my guests have asked themselves, to ask yourself these questions. Again, I'm a huge believer that questions hold the biggest power, and it's asking the right question that matters. So I'm going to stop talking now and head on over into what it is that's happening in this episode. And I'm joined by an incredibly talented young person who is, and I say young person because she's younger than me, only in age, every other way, we're totally kind of on it. It's Bhavya Raval. We are related, yes. The surname is a bit of a giveaway. And also I've realized that Raval is actually such a cool surname to have, but I digress. I am joined by an absolute singing sensation. Now, she is studying, okay? She's an engineer. That's how her thought process works. She's incredibly logical and practical. She's actually studying aerospace engineering. And you'll hear in the episode when we have this conversation, there's a lot of noise going on in the background, I have to tell you. And it was one of those things where I just had to talk to her because I wanted to understand, because she is a singer. That's her thing. That's her passion. That's what drives her. That's what keeps her going. Yet she is also totally obsessed with anything that flies up. And you'll hear this story and how it all comes together. And I absolutely love this conversation. Again, I think I love every conversation. I'm so happy that I don't think I've had a conversation that's been awkward or weird, because every single one of my guests has been phenomenal. But in this conversation, it's so fascinating how her creative expression shows up. And she's talking about these moments of where her creative expression actually comes to her and what she has to do in those moments. And I love that because it's something I totally connect with. And anyone who has those aha moments, ideas, will also get that. Here I go. I stopped talking and here you go. Bhavya Raval.
My name is Bhavya, as you mentioned. I live in South London. Well, I'm currently an aerospace engineering student at San Jose State University in California, and I am also a singer.
See how I love that intro, because I am in South London, but I'm a student here in San Jose in California. And it's like, but we're talking virtually and both of us are still in the UK.
Yeah, yes.
Lockdown.
Yes, the joys.
How did you get to this point of what you're studying? Where did that come from, where you went, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to do this.
I probably didn't know. For a bulk of growing up, I had various ideas of what I wanted to be. So I tried work experience in many different fields, such as pharmacy, accountancy, basically a range of things. And I don't know, I just a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I'd be like, this isn't what I want to do. I didn't find it enjoyable. I didn't find it interesting. And then it came time for picking your choices for uni, what you want to study. And I really enjoyed physics and maths at school. And that's where my proficiencies lied. And I was like, okay, I want to do something along physics and maths. And then looking through all the courses on uni syllabus. And then I saw mechanical engineering and I was like, this looks like a bit of me. I would enjoy this. Yeah, so I was just like, okay, this seems interesting. It was probably the only course that I was actually really interested in, or that really excited me.
That. So there's a whole prospectus of courses.
Yeah.
And mechanical engineering spoke to you.
Yeah, it was almost as if when I read the syllabus, I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. And then, my parents were like, okay, this is it. And then after I'd picked it, my mum especially, she was like, it's funny that you should pick this. What do you want to go into after? And I was just like, well, it's hard to say at the moment, but maybe something to do with aerospace or something after. But at the moment, I want to keep the aerospace industry isn't huge in the UK, right? So I was like, there aren't that many opportunities going forward at the moment. So I think I just want to keep my education kind of general so I can apply it to different aspects of engineering. So yeah, I think that would be the best thing to do. So she was just like, okay, cool. It's funny that this is what you've picked because you've said in your childhood, since you're about 5 years old, that you wanted to work with planes. And I was like, no way. And I've actually got, I think on my 4th or 5th birthday, I received this remote control aeroplane for my birthday as a present. And apparently about 1 or 2 days after receiving it, I'd like flown it and everything. And I was trying to basically break into it. And when my parents asked me why I'm trying to break into this plane, I apparently said, because I want to see inside. I want to see how it works. I want to figure out how it can move and fly and stuff without anyone doing anything, like remote control basically. And also apparently when I was 5 or 6, we had this family friend who came to our house and he asked me the typical question that you ask Indian, Asian person, like, oh, what are you going to be when you grow up? Are you going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer?
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously, there are only 3 options.
Yeah, exactly. And apparently I always said engineer at a really, really young age. But that obviously got lost as I grew up and as I started experiencing new things and being exposed to multiple different occupations, styles of life, people who do different things. But I guess that it was always in the back of my subconscious mind. And when I did go back to read about all these courses that were on offer to me, mechanical engineering, aerospace engineering basically spoke to me and I related to the most and I found most interesting. So it's very interesting how that happened, I guess.
So fascination with everything started very young and you had no idea that it started that young. And it was only when your mum said, this is interesting.
Yeah. And funnily enough, right?
And there's stuff to show me.
This is the plane.
You've still got it.
I think it's like a US Marines plane.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I've still got it. Also, it's one of the only toys that I've not let them like give away or chuck out or anything. I'm usually very detached with my things.
Yeah.
That and I think one of my teddy bears from like my first ever teddy bear are the 2 things that I've outright said, no, I don't want to give them away to charity. I've just got some sort of attachment to them and I don't know why.
But I think that's fine. I think there have to be some things from your childhood that connect, make sense.
No, definitely. But it's just, as I said, it's just the fact that I'm usually quite a detached person. I'm okay with detaching from things, giving things away, more than happy to. But I don't know, I just have some sort of connection to this plane. So it sits there on top of my desk.
And when it comes to anything to do with space, because one of the things you said is the industry here isn't really that big. And actually, it's one of the biggest growth areas.
It is.
Right?
Now it is.
It's huge.
But when I was applying, it wasn't so much. So, I mean, that's great now. So hopefully that means good opportunities when I'm done with my course.
And tell me, because this is the other thing, the actual equipment and the quality of the mechanics of the equipment that's available and used on the ground is far superior to what's actually being sent up, because what's being sent up, the blueprint of that has already been established and developed. And it's actually the research and development into creating what's on the ground and making it work up in the sky, which is the fascination. That's the big area, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So tell me, what types of things are you working on? Because like we said, you're in South London, but you're studying in America.
Yep.
How did that all come about?
So I was debating between doing my master's here and other places in the world as well. I wasn't just looking at America. I chose to go for America because there's a huge aerospace sector there. Usually all the unis have, they're really well funded. So they have really good research facilities, really good lab facilities, really good professors who have worked in the profession and have really good connections with people. Quite a few of my professors have best friends working for NASA and friends working for Boeing and stuff. So they bounce off information off each other. And then they come back to lectures and say, oh, a few days ago, I was speaking to my friend who works at NASA. And he said that at the moment, they're doing this, this, and this. So let's talk about that this lesson. So it's really cool because you discuss really current topics. And I think also I opted for America because of the flexibility around being able to choose the units or classes that you want to take, rather than here where you have 6 or 8 units that you get taught, but then 3 are compulsory and then you get to choose out of another 4. Whereas in America, you have about 25, 30 odd units, and then you can choose whatever you want out of those 30 units to make up the credits for your class. And it's very centered around you and what you want to do. And even if you don't know what you want to do, that's completely fine, because you've got a really wide selection of things that you can try out. I say try out, but like in your first semester, say if you want to take really varied classes, not really focus on a particular thing, and kind of see what you're good at or what you enjoy. And then you can take that to next semester and choose your next classes accordingly. Or chop and change, or you can not choose those classes because you don't think that they're the ones for you. So, yeah.
I totally get that. And I love the fact that it's that flexibility, right? Because if not now, then when? For starters,
Yes.
You might as well explore it now. And the things you mentioned about the professors having this insight into the industry already and bringing that to you, that's like second to none. Actually, not too long ago, I was at was an online event. Obviously, I wasn't anywhere. I was still sitting where I'm sitting.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. But I went to Lincoln University. They had their inaugural, this is what I mean, long words today are not working for me. Inaugural. This is why I needed you here today, okay, to help me speak.
I've got you.
Yeah. I went to their inaugural lecture, actually, for this. And the professor who was speaking, her name's Minnie Sarge. And this is another really interesting aspect of this. It's women are actually taking over, and women of specific backgrounds when it comes to aerospace engineering is also a huge area, because there seems to be this unleashing of, yes, the whole logical, the mechanical, the technical coming together with this almost like this creative fusion that seems to be troubleshooting and finding solutions and different ways to operate.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to throw it back to you,
Sure.
because you are almost you're a trailblazer in that sense, because you are bringing that all together and applying that to your learning and your research projects and your collaborations with your other students. How does that all make you feel?
Actually, just a thought that I had while you were saying that, you can see now that women of a certain background of ethnic minorities especially are joining this field, paving their way through it. And I just had a thought that it's probably I found that women from different backgrounds within lectures and within discussion in class, we have a different approach to solving the problem, which is really interesting, which is something that's just clicked in my mind right now. And like many times my lecturers have said, oh, like, Bhavya, that's a really interesting approach. We didn't think of this. And the same with the other women in my groups and in my projects. And the guys are like, oh, yeah, you have a point. And sometimes it's much simpler than the solutions that they come up with. I'm not saying that we're smarter or anything, but I think it's just, like living in the Western world with also trying to stay true to our culture and ethnicity. We have to balance and troubleshoot and deal with problems accordingly, right? You find your own way to solve certain issues because you're kind of like in between the two, or trying to find a balance constantly.
You know what? It's so interesting you're saying that, right? Because there's a lot of power that looking at the world brings to what you're doing and marries it all together. And we see this because I think it's like Matthew Side's Rebel Ideas. I don't know if you've read that, but that's one book that actually looks at how important diversity is in coming up with creative solutions. And it just makes so much sense that when it comes to, well, almost anything, but especially when it comes to aerospace, that's where it lends itself beautifully. So I'm really glad that you've had this insight moment while we've been talking.
Yeah, I had like this epiphany. Oh, like that makes sense. This could be why.
Yeah. And you also said that it's not so much that anyone's cleverer, it's the fact that your perspective and your ability to bring your experience to it and look at it in a different way. Actually, that's powerful. And it's not about it being good or bad or clever or not clever. It's actually the power in that is so significant.
I mean, don't get me wrong, it's even the guys from ethnic minorities or different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds, that are their responses and their approaches to problems are also, I'm not going to say similar to ours, but they're different. They are different.
Right at the beginning, you mentioned that you're also a singer.
Yeah.
Tell me about singing in your life. Where did that start? When did that happen? And was it as early as this memory of the aeroplane?
So the role of singing and music, I'm not even going to say it came into my life. It's ingrained, I feel, in me to some extent. It started way earlier than this aerospace idea. So my mum, who is Indian classical trained vocalist, she also does music lessons in the London area. So she has been teaching ever since she's lived in the UK. And she likes to joke around and say that, you know, you learnt this in the womb. I think I've picked a lot of music up while growing up, I guess, seeing her teach. I've never, until very recently, had a music lesson of my own with her or with anyone else. Yeah, so that's something that I am pursuing right now, but growing up, that's not something that I did. It sounds kind of bad, and I feel guilty when I say it, but I feel like I have to now. But I've always felt very, like mum's a teacher and it's there, like when I want to do it, it's there. And I feel like I hit an age and started adulting and I'm like, oh, now it's still there, but I don't have the time. And it's always hard to find the time to balance everything, to now be able to learn and pursue this. So in terms of the answer to your question, where did it come in and was it earlier than aerospace? Yeah, way earlier than aerospace. I'm lucky enough to have been raised in a household where music was always present.
I love the fact that your mum says it's like it's in utero, it's ingrained, it's in your genes. There is no and, if, but, whatever. And so you said recently you've started to explore music lessons. Where does that come from?
Yeah. So I'm learning from my mum. She's the closest and the best teacher I could ask for, I guess. She's taught me many things in life, this too. So yeah, I think it was maybe when lockdown started last year that I was kind of like, I want to, I'm not going to say push myself, but I saw her and I was very, I want to say intimidated, not by her, but I've just seen so many great singers and great musicians throughout my whole life so far that I was a bit intimidated. Oh, will I ever be this good? Or will I ever be like good enough? I've done performances and stuff. I've done gigs. I'm like, am I really good enough thing? And I was just like, you know what? I want to, regardless of whether it's not being good enough for something, it's not being the best at something, it's about just wanting to grow and just wanting to progress in whatever interests me. And I think a few years ago is when I got really, I'd say my interest grew in singing. I'd been singing my whole life, but I feel like it just blew up. And I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to do this. I really want to do this gig. The opportunities, thankfully, they came to me. I didn't have to look for them. But yeah, I did 1 or 2 gigs and I was like, oh my God, I love this.
Describe that feeling of that loving, of that singing, the performing.
So my first huge full gig, I'd done performances at other people's gigs, if you know what I mean, guest kind of performance, introductory performance. But I'd never done like a full on gig. And I think the first one was in Glasgow at a Navratri gig, which was it 2 or 3 days long? As in like it ran for like 2 or 3 nights. So yeah, I think receiving the opportunity, I was like, okay, yeah, this is something that I could do. I really enjoy Navratri. I really enjoy Gujarati music. I really enjoy going to Garba, and you'd see me singing the Garba as I'm playing. And I was just like, okay, yeah, this is something that I could do. I think this is something that I'd enjoy. So I kind of went into rehearsals, and I got to know these musicians and other singers. I was like, oh my God, I love rehearsing. I hadn't even gotten to the gig and I was just like, oh my God, I love rehearsals. I love jamming. It's just so nice. I'd never hung out with musicians in that way where I don't know. I just never like networked with them in that way. Obviously spoken to lots, but never jammed musically. I was like, I love this. I was really shy, so I'd sing like really quietly. It wasn't bad. I was just a lot quieter, a lot more reserved, I guess, with my voice. Whereas now I'll like belt something out. But
Yes, and we're coming on to that, don't worry.
Okay.
And it's really interesting though, because you said how you kind of walked into this space and you were like, oh, okay. And so just for the listeners, I guess, is Navratri is a Gujarati festival or a Hindi festival. And it's all about singing and dancing. It's about this incredible, empowering, big feminine energy, right? In different forms. And all of the songs that come about are so energetic and so deep and meaningful at the same time, all celebrating this energy. And when you talk about not being with, I mean, yeah, you'd been around musicians or you'd been there, but actually to be in the energy and to thrive off that. When you're speaking to me, it sounds like you plugged into that and went, yes, please, I'll have more of this.
Yes. I would like an unlimited flow of this energy, please. Thank you.
And then at the same time, you said at that point you were still quite shy, still quite reserved. And that came out in how your voice was projected because you yourself still hadn't found that almost like that foundation or that confidence within you. So you're still searching.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you overcome that?
I overcame that. I dealt with confidence issues while singing until very recently, until about a year and a bit ago. And I feel like I overcame that when I had the desire to just progress, to just grow as a singer, musician, vocalist. I think that was the point where I got really confident. And I was okay with not being great or not being good or like just being as I am in the moment. I had the thought in the back of my head, you know, I'm growing, I'm progressing. This is where I'm at in my journey right now. That doesn't mean that this is where I'm going to be permanently. Only I have the power to change that. And I have so many resources around me. I have one like 10 feet away and I've not used it for my whole life.
Absolutely. And that's such an incredible way to look at it. And the fact that you were like, okay, this is my mum and she is amazing and she does this. This is her thing.
It is.
Tap into it. What a phenomenal thing to be able to do.
Yeah, so my confidence came from, it sounds really cheesy actually, but like just from accepting who I was in that moment, if that makes sense. And I think that itself was really empowering because, yeah, as I said, I'd always seen these great singers, heard these great singers, whether in live or online or on YouTube and stuff. I always had, I don't want to say doubts, but I was always so amazed. But I think that just accepting that this was where I was in my journey really, really helped.
Yes, that's a very helpful way to look at it, definitely. What was that conversation like when you said to your mum, okay, mum, I want to do this now? I want to know because, you know, I love your mum. She's amazing. This incredible, oh my gosh, I love being around her.
Oh.
You know, but at the same time, what was the response? Because I can imagine if I said to my mum, oh, Mum, I really need your help. I can just hear the Gujarati already. It's like, oh, but now you want my help. Really? Okay, fine. Like, I can hear it. I want to know what she said.
So I'm not going to say, like, she never pushed me in my childhood or while I was a teenager or even in my early 20s. She's always encouraged me to take up some sort of vocal training. She's like, you have a good tone, you've got a good voice, you know your sur, which is your notes, I guess. You have a good sense of tal, which is rhythm. So, you know, why don't you do something with it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm focusing on this right now. Or, I don't know, I don't really want to do this professionally. Or, you know, whatever my excuse was at the time, basically. I mean, then I didn't think of it as an excuse, but now I look back on it and I was just like, they're probably just excuses to avoid it. Thankfully, like I know a lot of singers, a lot of musicians who were forced into it in their childhood. Some ended up loving it, some ended up then hating it. So yeah, I'm quite thankful that that didn't happen in my case. And the conversation went, it wasn't too bad actually, you know. She was like, are you sure? And I was just like, yeah, I'm sure. And she was like, it's going to take discipline. And I was just like, yeah, okay. It was like, it turned into a really serious, scary conversation. And she was proper serious about it. She goes, it's going to take discipline. And I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm prepared to be disciplined. We can even set a time for a lesson, or once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. Like whenever you're free, tell me when your availability is, and we'll figure it out with our schedules. But I want it to be a proper lesson. I want you to teach me from the absolute basics, basically. And she's like, oh, you don't need to learn from the absolute basics. You know most of it. And I was like, yeah, but knowing it and actually going through the learning process of it, I think is 2 different things.
That's the engineer in you, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So the conversation didn't go, she did say like once or twice, she was just like, well, I've been telling you for so many years and you didn't listen to me then. And she goes,
better late than never.
Yeah. But she was like, I did know. I had a feeling that you'd probably come later on in life and approach me with it. And I was just like, I just don't think that I appreciated it. And I think the style of music that she teaches as well. But like growing up, I listened to like a lot of different kinds of music. There was Western music and then Indian music. And then at a point I was really into Arabic music. So yeah, I just had a lot of influence while growing up, the style and genre of music that she did teach. I was kind of like, oh, not really into that, you know. I'd rather be singing something else.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. I totally understand where that can come from. But sorry, carry on. You were saying.
No, I was just thinking. So she teaches Hindustani classical music. She teaches Hindustani classical vocals. And I think to learn, I'm not going to say to learn, but whilst going through the learning process of it, I think it does, I think it really does promote maturity, because you have to be so disciplined. I think you have to really go into it with a really mature and really dedicated mindset. I feel like that's really important to kind of reap the maximum benefits from it and to even grow and progress. And I think that maybe earlier on in life, I might not have been ready to receive that or appreciate it even. So, I mean, I'm glad I did make the decision to start learning when I did.
In terms of music, how many languages can you now sing in?
Fluently.
Fluently, not fluently?
Right. Let's see, there's English, there's Hindi, there's Gujarati, which are the 3 languages I sing in the most. Then there's Punjabi. I've recently started exploring Marathi. I used to listen to a lot of Tamil songs as well, so I can sing in Tamil, don't necessarily understand what the lyrics mean, although I do try to look up the translation of what I'm singing, just to make sure that I can bring forward the emotions in the song and in the lyrics, etc. I feel like I could relate to it a lot more if I understand what I'm singing.
That's such a valid point. Like, unlike me, I just like the sound of the song, and when I can say my words properly, I just sing it.
That too. But I think especially when performing, and when you're not performing live, I feel like it's really important to understand the meaning, the emotions behind the composition, behind the lyrics. And I think that it just helps connect to the listener, whoever they may be, on a more deeper level, I think.
You know, so when you're actually performing, are you singing, you know, like, for example, with public speaking, you get said, oh, speak to one person and make eye contact. What strategy do you adopt when you're singing to keep yourself grounded?
Singing live, that is.
Well, yeah, absolutely. When you're singing live and not in the bathroom, because that's just strange.
Yeah, I'm definitely not looking at anyone while singing in the bathroom. I just try to stay present and try to connect with the musicians. Try to keep eye contact with the music. It's actually quite important when doing live performances to maintain eye contact or communications, because you can't speak obviously, but through like facial expressions or certain hand signals and stuff with the other musicians and the other singers, to just make sure you're on the same page. If you're like, oh, you need to repeat that line, I've thought of an improvisation that I want to do. You need to obviously communicate that to the, say, the piano player, because then he's just going to go on or she's just going to go on and play the next line. So I think it's just being very aware of what you're doing and what the other musicians are doing. And I feel like it's like a little bubble on stage sometimes, where the musicians and the performers are in their own world, but also connecting to the audience. Like you can't not connect with them. You can't not look at them. I think initially that's something that I found quite challenging, actually, trying to balance the two. And I think I'm still trying to find that healthy balance.
What do you do when you're searching for that balance? What do you find yourself doing or looking at or looking for?
I'm not too sure, actually. Now I think of it, most of it just comes naturally. There'll be some lyrics or some melody that I really want to connect with the audience with these lyrics. So, you'd look at them, you'd have eye contact with certain members, and you can usually see, unless the lights are really bright, you can usually see, some people are really into it and some people are like enjoying it and some people are just there. You can tell, you can tell someone just dragged them along. This isn't their kind of scene, which is fine. I'm grateful that they're there even.
They're making up numbers.
Yeah. No, I appreciate them either way.
What do you see happening next for you in terms of singing?
So as you know, I do upload covers on Instagram and on YouTube. I think in terms of singing, if there was one thing that I would like to produce my own original music and my own original songs. And I want to say I'd want to sing them myself and compose them. I have written a few songs, but I'm just not too happy with them yet. So I'll see in the future. That is something that I definitely see myself doing. But apart from that, I feel like if I put too many expectations on what I want to do with it, it blocks the creative flow, I want to say, because it becomes like a task, if that makes sense. Not that it's not usually, but it's making music, making the mashups and stuff that I create. I say, in a lot of Instagram lives, and to anyone who asks me, like, how do you come up with your mashups? You mash 8-9 songs up and they flow so seamlessly. And I'm like, in the car, I'd just be singing one song. I'd start singing another song and singing another song, singing another song. And usually, like, I would call someone, I'd call a friend or I'd call my mom and I'd be like, okay, I need you to write this down because I'm going to forget it in about 5 minutes. But it's like this song, this song, this song, this song, and this song, and this is the order. Can you please write this down? Do you have a pen and paper handy? Or can you message it back to me? So, to answer your question, I think I kind of go off on a tangent sometimes, or most of the time. But going forward,
that's so important. Because what you've just identified is that when you hit a flow state or when an idea comes to you, it comes to you. So it has to be captured. And the fact that that's your process, like you're phoning up a friend or you're phoning your mum to say, oh, no, write this down. This is what's happening. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I'd have like 3-4 days where I'd come up with about, I think it was just happened a few months ago, where there were about 3 days where I came up with, I think, 4 or 5 different mashup tracks. But then you can't work on those 4 or 5 mashup tracks all at the same time. So yeah, it's very unpredictable. I feel like for a musician or for a singer, unless this is what they do full time, I feel like it's very unpredictable to say where they see it going in the far future, I guess. But in the near future, I hope to release some original compositions, some original lyrics, some original vocals. And I think I just progress. That's all I'm kind of focusing on at the moment. Learning different techniques as well.
That's fascinating. And I love the fact that everything that you just said, I totally get it, because that's a lot of stuff that I work with my clients when it comes to, because, we naturally work in cycles, right? So when you have that cycle or when it happens, you just have to let it be as it is. Otherwise, it's that brief, it's gone. Another question. Would you sing for us? What's your favorite song? Well, 2 questions.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I would be happy to sing for you. The favorite song? I don't have one. I couldn't even tell you a favorite genre or a favorite like group of songs. I feel like I have a top 5 that changes by the day.
So what are you going to sing for us today?
So it's Mura Saiya, also called Kamaj, by Shafqat Amanat Ali Khan. Have you heard that song? Are you familiar with it? I think you are, yeah. Yeah, such a good song. And I don't know, I just really like the emotion in it. So yeah, I guess I can present a few lines. सावन भी तो जाए पहरवा, सावन भी तो जाए पहरवा, मन मेरा घबराए मन मेरा घबराए ऐ सो गए परदेस पिया तुम ऐ सो गए परदेस पिया तुम चैन हमें नहीं आवे चैन हमें नहीं आए मोरा सैया मुझसे बोले ना मोरा सैया मुझसे बोले ना मैं लाख जतन कर हारे लाख जतन कर हार रही मोरा सैया मुझसे बोले ना मोरा सैया मुझसे बोले ना.
That was amazing. I got goosebumps.
Oh,
That was so beautiful.
So yeah, that's a song that I've kind of been feeling over the last few months, I'd say.
That's amazing. And so where can people find you on socials?
Okay, so I'm at Bhavya Raval, Raval with the 2 L's on Instagram. And then I'm Bhavya Raval with 1 L, which is my real surname. On YouTube, you can find me also on Facebook. If you go to one of my social media accounts, you'll find the links to the rest on there. But I'm on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram primarily. I post a lot of small clips on Instagram, and I go on Instagram lives and stuff, and post longer tracks on YouTube.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Eternal Paradigm. I'd like to take this opportunity just to remind you that your comments, your feedback, and your listenership is incredibly valued